Welcome back. We are going to look at Congress now. I am recording this video on October 29th after the House of Representatives has declared that Mike Johnson will be their new speaker for the remainder of the 118th Congress. So let's begin. So Roll Call puts out these weekly or semi-weekly videos called Congressional Hits and Misses that are usually good, with nerds like me for a chuckle. I can't click on it and show it to you for copyright reasons, but I'd encourage you to look at that and kind of wander around their YouTube site just for fun, if you want to. So, Congress is the first branch of government. They get their authority from Article 1 of the Constitution. Section 1 says that U.S. House and Senate have all legislative powers. Section 2, House members are elected every second year by the people of the several states. Representatives have to be 25 years old, have been a citizen of the U.S. for 7 years, and must live in the state where he or she is elected. So what are we looking at here? What would I ask you on a test? All right. You should know that the legislative branch of government has all legislative powers. At least I hope you would know that. House members are elected every other year. Representatives have to be 25 years old. They have to have been a citizen for 7 years. And they have to live in the state where they are elected. Do they have to live in the state for however many number of years? That's an interesting question, and that just depends on the state in which you live. And the electors in each state shall have the qualifications requisite for electors of the most numerous branch of the state legislature. All right, so this is just a fancy way of saying that everybody who is qualified to vote for a representative will be allowed to do so. That's it. Each state will have at least one U.S. representative. And the number of representatives in the House is determined by the census, which occurs every 10 years and determines the population of the United States. The Constitution mandates that there's at least one representative for every 30,000 people. Now, is there? Absolutely not. Representatives, I wish I had my phone out here, but representatives are covering, I think this is probably low. The ones in the more populous states like New York or Illinois, probably covering about 200,000 people. That's probably a little low. Why is that? I've linked you to an article explaining how the House got stuck at the 435 number. I would encourage you to look at it. Am I pulling test questions from here? You ask, should I waste my time clicking on this link? Oh, you bet. Click on this link. Figure it out. Read the story of why the House has been stuck at 435 members. It's an interesting one. All right? When vacancies happen in the representation from any state, the executive authority, meaning the governor, shall issue writs of election to fill such vacancies. That's it. So the governor has to issue a writ of election. The House will choose its speaker and other officers. Now, I think I can say without fear of contradiction that the 118th Congress has spent an inordinate amount of time picking its speaker. The House will have sole power of impeachment. And we'll get to this later, but I'll run through it now because it's important. So, an impeachment. The House comes together. The House decides that Representative so-and-so did X, Y, and Z. in Bermuda while he was a representative in the Congress. And this is wrong. And this qualifies in the mind of the Congress as a high crime and misdemeanor, or misdemeanor. So they get together. They say Representative X did X, Y, and Z wrong things in Bermuda, which are illegal and should merit him being removed from office. All right, the impeachment happens. It gets walked down to the Senate. The Senate then will vote. They'll hear the case of Representative X and will say, we'll have a trial, and 100 senators will then cast a vote. Then they will cast a vote because they act as jurors in the impeachment trial. So if 2/3 of the Senate vote in the affirmative, then Representative X is removed from office. And that's all that an impeachment does. It just removes the person from office, whether it be a president, a representative, a senator, a judge, whatever. Then it's up to whoever, like the FBI, maybe, to pursue any criminal investigation that may need to happen after the person is out of federal office. Okay, so at the start of the 118th Congress, it took 15 rounds of voting for them to get to this. A Speaker McCarthy with 216 votes to Hakeem Jeffries, which is this gentleman, 212 votes. 6 people voted present. Nobody didn't vote. And if you want, again, if you're a nerd, if you might enjoy this stuff like I do, click the link. I can't because I don't want a copyright strike. So this lasted for about 9 months. Then it was unusual, certainly. 15 rounds of voting over 4 days to elect Kevin McCarthy, who is, again, this guy of California. And that was history-making in itself, because last time it took more than one vote for a speaker was in 1923. The 68th Congress required 9 rounds of voting over 3 days to arrive at their choice, and you can read all about it in those articles that I've linked. Again, I wish I could click on them and go through them with you. It's just YouTube. So we come to the motion to vacate. This is a term you need to know, because we've moved into a new realm of politics, a new kind of politics. So McCarthy came in as a very, very weak speaker who got his job by making concessions that would be difficult to keep. Like, don't work with Democrats. But we have a majority of 4. Speaking as a Republican member of the conference, but there's a majority of 4. So one concession that McCarthy made to get the speakership was to agree to a rule that would allow his ouster at any time by one member. And that's called a motion to vacate, which is a procedure that rank-and-file lawmakers can use to remove the Speaker of the House. A motion, it can be used to remove anybody, but we're talking about the Speaker of the House, so there's that. So this was ultimately successful. Representative Matt Gaetz of Florida led the charge to strip McCarthy of the speakership after he cut a deal with Democrats to fund the government for another 45 days. I guess that's a criminal act. Just before it would have otherwise shut down at the hands of right-wing rebels and the caucus. They called themselves the Freedom Caucus, these right-wing people. Gates brought a motion to vacate on the House floor, a procedural move that had never before been successful to oust a speaker. Although, again, we're making history here, although maybe not in good ways. It had been used once before in 1910. The speaker's name then was Cannon, and I believe I have a link here in the next slide or slide after that you can read about that. So, yeah, we're not making history in good ways here, but it had been used once before. So McCarthy had most of his caucus behind him, to the tune of about 94 or 95%. He needed a majority of the House to vote against his removal to stay in power. The Democrats determined that they weren't going to help save him, so none of the Democrats voted to save him. Now, with the 4-vote majority, any more than four defections, and McCarthy was out of a job, which happened. A total of 8 Republicans joined all present Democrats in voting to depose McCarthy. And we have Andy Biggs, Ken Buck, Eli Crane, Bob Good, Matt Rosendale are just some of them. And these guys are members of the ultra-conservative House Freedom Caucus. So, Speaker's out. We have to find a new one. Except we already kind of have a new one. So, this guy's name's Patrick McHenry. He was and is the chair. He couldn't when he was serving Speaker Pro Tem of the House Financial Services Committee. So Gates put forward a motion that would allow for a vote on McCarthy's ouster, which was successful 218 to 208. So that motion had to precede the motion to vacate, which was successful 216 to 210. And that occurred on October 3rd. And Patrick McHenry of North Carolina, the guy you see on the screen below me, took the gavel as Speaker Pro Tem, which is a new continuity of government measure. I say new as in it's post 9/11. We had never dealt with this before. I'm not embarrassed to admit I didn't know that this existed before this incident. All right, so Patrick McHenry took his role in a very narrow perspective and only thought that he was in there to facilitate the election of a new speaker. All right, he could have, like Kevin McCarthy in interviews said, that he thought when he was putting Patrick McHenry's name down on a piece of paper that if something happened to him, Patrick McHenry could do everything that he, Kevin McCarthy, could do as Speaker until a new one could be elected. But McHenry and McCarthy are kind of confusing me. McHenry didn't take that view, and he just facilitated the election of a new Speaker. But that really is neither here nor there. I would encourage you also to look at this link. So, round one, we have Steve Scalise. He's the majority leader. The House adjourned for about a week after McCarthy was voted out in order to allow the House Republican Conference to coalesce around a new candidate, and they came to the conclusion that this gentleman, Majority Leader Steve Scalise of Louisiana, would be their next Speaker candidate. And Scalise won that ballot 113 to 99. The other candidate they were looking at was Jim Jordan. Now, Scalise immediately ran into problems. Some representatives, like Lauren Boebert and Max Miller, said they would continue to vote for Jordan on the floor. And they would have. And Carlos Jimenez, I don't know much about him, other than evidently he's a member of the House of Representatives. Said he was going to keep voting for Kevin McCarthy unless McCarthy told him not to. So there's your 1, 2, 3 defections. So Scalise withdrew his candidacy before a floor vote could be held due to these defections, and now we're at 9 days without a speaker. Now, and this is a big deal. I should explain that there is no speaker because without a speaker of the House is essentially shut down for business. So, like, we couldn't send an aid package to Ukraine or do anything to help Israel or, work on something more pressing and closer to home, work on measures that would keep the government open past the 45 days that Kevin McCarthy bought at the expense of his speakership. So then the Republicans tried Jim Jordan. On October 13th, so 10 days in, they settled on him. He ran against Austin Scott and won 124 to 81. Then the Republican conference, they held what's called, I guess they called it a validation vote to ask whether members would support Jim Jordan in a floor vote. Now, 152 members voted yes, 55 voted no, 1 voted present. I could not find who the present was. The present vote was. So this is not a good thing. If you remember, I said a moment ago, 4 defections and 55 are saying, no, I won't vote for you. But Jim Jordan went ahead. So they held the first floor vote on October 17th, and 20 Republicans voted against him and sank his nomination. So he got 200 votes in total. The Democratic leader got more votes than he did. Now, why the Democratic leader did not become speaker is because he needed to hit a threshold. I believe when Jim Jordan, it was 217. And Jeffries, the Democratic leader, only has 212 in his caucus. So while he got more votes than Jim Jordan, it still wasn't enough. Then, they held a second vote on a Speaker Jordan because, why not? And he lost the vote again. So the Republicans removed him as the Speaker designate. 17 days in. Now, Tom Emmer, I'm laughing because his poor guy, his nomination lasted 4 whole hours. So he took part in a candidate forum on October 23rd, and on the 24th they met to pick their speaker nominee, and Majority Whip Tom Emmer, who you see on the screen, was chosen, and he dropped out the same day for 4 hours. It was 4 whopping hours that he was the speaker nominee because Donald Trump, mainly Donald Trump, he took to Truth Social and called him a rhino and just stirred up a whole bunch of trouble. And also, there were hardliners in the conference that weren't happy with this guy. So as I said, Trump called him a rhino in front of the press. Emmer, it took to Truth Social to oppose Emmer's bid. So, as I said at the beginning, a whopping 4 hours he held on until he had to drop out. So, we go on to round 4. Mike Johnson, he's the speaker now. So, round 4 was successful. Another candidate forum was held on October 24th. They selected Mike Johnson of Louisiana as the speaker nominee. Now, a conference vote was held to gauge level of support, and it indicated that he might be successful on the floor. So they took it to the floor, and now we're here as of October 25th. So they took from October 3rd to October 25th. Johnson got 220 votes, Jeffries 209. And I know that doesn't add up to 435. I'm not entirely sure where the other people went, to be honest. They might have gotten sick of all the voting just for a speaker. Who knows? So that's the saga of the Republican search for a House Speaker. And I'm glad they found one, and I hope that this guy's very successful, and that we don't have to go through this as a country again anytime soon, because as you see here, it was a mess. And this is history. This is history, which is why I'm bugging you guys with it, because this hasn't happened before. So, what does the speaker do? What were they all fighting about? Watch and find out. Please, test questions are pulled from this video. So, I'm going into a part two. This whole Congress thing isn't being completely re-recorded, but I'm just going to talk a little bit about the Senate, and if there's some overlap in part two, I apologize. So, we know each state gets 2 senators. Why? Equal representation. So because of the big states and the small states and population, it's just equaled out in this way. So a small state like Delaware and a huge state like California, 2 senators. And there are 3 classes of senators. A third of them are up for election every 2 years. If there's a vacancy, the governor can fill the seat for the remainder of the term. It's not like with the House where there has to be an election. J.B. Pritzker could just point his finger and say, you there, you're filling the Senate term. And it's as easy as that. The governor gives the okay, you're a senator. Then you go to Washington, you be sworn in for the remainder of the term. Senators must be at least 30 years old, a resident of the United States for at least 9 years, and be an inhabitant of that state for which he shall be chosen. Remember that. The vice president will be the president of the Senate. She will not have a vote unless there's a 50-50 tie on a piece of legislation, and that's been increasingly likely in recent years with the narrow majorities that both sides experience. It was he when it was Mike Pence in the Trump administration. So the Senate also has the power to choose their other officers, and also a president pro tempore, who in the absence of the vice president, or when he shall exercise the office of president of the United States. So the vice president used to be in pretty much every day, but then they became more and more a part of the executive branch. I'm majorly simplifying this. They became more and more a part of the executive branch. The president started putting more on their plate. So now they're a lot less legislature, more executive, but they still pop in every now and then. The vice president does preside occasionally, like when there's a tie, but it's really the president pro tempore, whose name is Patty Murray, and you should know that name. The Senate will have the sole power to try all impeachments. Now, the House, again, puts together a bill of impeachment where they list everything that they think somebody did wrong. That gets walked over. The Senate sits to impeach. The senators act as jurors, and they are under oath. When the president is tried, the Chief Justice presides at the hearing. If anybody else, it's just a senator will preside over the trial. I believe in the second Trump impeachment, I think he was president pro tem at the time, but Senator Leahy of Vermont was presiding. And 2/3 of those members in the Senate are required to convict. Now, I'm 99.9% sure I've caught you up. So I will leave you to listen to a past me in parts 2, 3, and 4. Thank you.